So I'll try to keep my, my presentation, do I just press go? There we go. My presentation relatively short, which I usually say that, and it's not. So give me a shout if I'm going over time, because I want to allow for questions if you have any. So obviously we are the Orangutan Land Trust, and we have been working in the palm oil field now since, in previous incarnations, is that the word, since about 2005, I suppose. So we've got a good track record. We're very participant in the RSPO. We serve on the Biodiversity High Conservation Value Working Group, the Complaints Panel, Claims and Communications Working Group, the P&C Review 2013 and 2018, which means we helped to write the standard. And by virtue of that, it means I need to be knowledgeable in addressing all of the issues associated with unsustainable palm oil. I can't just focus on the one criteria that has to do with orangutans. I have to think about social issues and so forth. So I can help answer a lot of your questions across the board, not just on biodiversity, and several other working groups and task forces within the RSPO. We're also members of the Palm Oil Innovation Group. I won't talk too much about that, but if you're interested, I talk to you during the break, perhaps. And we also initiated an organization or a platform called Pongo Alliance. I'll mention them later in the talk. We're based here in the UK and support projects for wildlife conservation on the ground as well. So what is the reality on the ground? What the reality is, as Daryl Weber, CEO of RSPO, said, the impacts of unsustainable palm oil are catastrophic. They're catastrophic for the iconic species of the orangutan, which you see being rescued here just about a week ago from an oil palm plantation where he's come into some trouble. The deforestation, you can see a very old growth tree has been removed here as a symbol of what might have been there before these new plantings. The impacts also for social human rights, et cetera, are equally abominable, children's rights and so forth. So this is why I work to ensure that palm oil is developed sustainably. I don't want to see more of this. I used to work in the rescue centers. We created a center designed for 100 orangutans by 2006. About 5 years into our existence, we had over 800 orangutans that had been rescued from oil palm. And that couldn't go on. So we look to science. We look to research data, facts, rather than emotion. Emotion can go some way, as with the Iceland video, to raising some emotion. But if the facts aren't behind it, the information being sent out aren't well-informed and well-crafted, then you're doing a disservice. So the IUCN in 2017 had a very groundbreaking report called Palm Oil and Biodiversity, and it talked about the very real impacts. And it concluded that saying no to palm oil would simply shift the problem, these impacts elsewhere. As we saw, it could go to soya. I would add that if one day these perhaps well-intended blanket boycotts of palm oil that do not differentiate between good and bad palm oil actually brought the palm oil industry to a grinding halt in Indonesia, Malaysia, that doesn't mean that they're not going to continue to seek economic development on those lands. And with the global demand for all oil seeds continuing to grow up, the likely replacement would be soy, I would imagine. And we saw that with the low yields, that would be much more intensive on the remaining forest land there. Borneo Futures also did a report last year, 18 months ago, in which we found that 10,000 orangutans live outside of protected areas and within areas allocated for industrial palm in Borneo alone. Now, they live in Borneo and Sumatra, so we just looked at Borneo in this instance. It's 10,000 orangutans that are in these fragmented landscapes whose lives hang in the balance if we don't protect those remaining landscapes, as fragmented as they are, where the forest is, where the orangutans are, where are the solutions, because we can't pick up and put 10,000 into that little rescue center, which was designed for 100, all right? And that information feeds into the Pongo Alliance, which also uses the research and data and impacts measurements out there to guide its strategy and efforts. So, I'm trying to press the button. So what's the solution? Iceland and a number of vegetarians and vegans and people are really outraged, and rightly so, with what palm oil is doing to orangutans and to the planet, say that we should boycott or ban it. We don't believe this is the right thing to do. We are here to say, please don't eliminate palm oil from your supply chains, but ensure that the palm oil or whatever commodity is in your supply chain is deforestation free, is sustainable. So we're not alone in saying that a boycott is not a strategy for changing this industry, and that demanding sustainable palm oil is. Here's just a small sample of some of the organizations around the world that agree with that sentiment. And that list is growing every day. So, what is sustainable palm oil? Well, Judith talked about the RSPO. We believe that the RSPO does signify sustainable palm oil. Previous to November and the new PNC, it fell a bit short on preventing deforestation. Previous to that one, it said no clearing of primary forest and no clearing of forest which contains what has been designated as high conservation value. That left some kinds of forest open for exploitation. Now with the new PNC, it is essentially no deforestation, and that is measured through this high carbon stock approach combined with HCV to look at the biodiversity, look at the tree cover, and the stratification of the forest. So it's stronger on deforestation, as strong as the market has been demanding. The market, up until a year ago, in the past couple of years, many retailers and brands around the world making commitments for NDPE, no deforestation, no peat conversion or clearance, and no exploitation, also all of your social and labor and human rights. These commitments varied in how robust they were or their time-bound plan to deliver it, but nonetheless, that message was getting out to the growers saying, if you want to sell us your product must fit the bill. So RSPO has responded, and its membership, these growers and the NGOs and the retailers and the finance institutions have come together and said, now with market demand and what we know about biodiversity and high conservation value, we need a stronger standard, and here it is. So the new standard delivers on no deforestation. It also has improved the criteria on peat. So there's previously you could convert some peat. Now you cannot convert any peat whatsoever of any depth. And there's requirements for if you have existing plantation on peat, what you have to do in those circumstances with that peat. And vastly improved social criteria across the board. Now the proof will be in the implementation. So a little bit of watching this space. We know that there are companies already delivering these. The members of the Palm Oil Innovation Group, for example, are all members of RSPO. So they've been verified against that kind of criteria independently of RSPO and are already delivering this. And there's certainly others that are going to be certified right away against the new criteria because they have been delivering this product already. And it's just a matter of proving it or auditing it. So I spoke very briefly, I mentioned briefly the Pongo Alliance. So the initial focus of this was that we had this problem with the orangutans, that the rescue organizations couldn't possibly pick them all up, yet they were in drastic decline. They were dying in these fragmented landscapes or coming into problems. But there were also a lot of orangutans, and go back to that research, that were managing just fine in these landscapes. Our researchers found that orangutans will actually move along the oil palm plantation for up to 7 kilometers, moving from one patch of forest to another, creating minimal damage along the way. They might take a few palm fruit off the floor or build a nest in the palms, or take some of the fronds. But for any big company, there's negligible impact to them. So as long as you didn't kill them, they were managing this landscape. So the idea of just picking them up and moving them to another place was no longer seen as a solution. Indeed, there are a number of companies who simply had a hotline to the rescue center, said, we've got an orangutan and we want to clear this. Could you please take it away for us? And they became an orangutan removal service, and then the company could proceed to clear. Well, if there's an orangutan there, there's probably some other biodiversity and high conservation values there. So just removing that big in-your-face feature of high conservation value doesn't change the actual value of the land that you're clearing. So our solutions are for enabling resilient landscapes where palm oil and biodiversity, wildlife, can coexist. And it's not just about the orangutan. We're launching on a project with elephant in Sumatra. And indeed, we hope to scope this out to other commodities and in other regions and other wildlife. So the coexistence. And for the growers, what it means is not just managing with the help of the experts and the NGOs like Orangutan Land Trust, the wildlife that's within their concessions, but going beyond their concessions and looking across connectivity across landscapes, across the Kinabatangan River Plain of Sabah, for example, where there's a dozen companies growing there, get them all coordinated so that wildlife, the elephants and the orangutans and everything else, proboscis monkeys, have free movement across these landscapes. And we enhance the landscapes with fruiting trees, etc. Like I said, I wanted to keep it short to be able to answer any questions, and I'll end by saying that I am at your disposal. I'm based in Derbyshire. I'm happy to come and talk to your teams or visit your institutions to give you more information. We do encourage sustainability partnerships. It's not a requirement of that service, but that would be something we'd be really keen to develop the partnerships so that you can say, we're working with Orangutan Land Trust to make sure what we're delivering is orangutan friendly, deforestation free, sustainable, and you can feel good about it. So I think we lend a little something to the messages that you'll want to give out, where you don't have to be afraid to say we're using sustainable palm oil, but we are proud to be using sustainable palm oil because it's providing solutions like the Pongo Alliance. It's actually not just not harming biodiversity, it's helping biodiversity. What, a complete bizarre thing to think that palm oil is helping biodiversity. It can be done. Thank you.